And we are live again. I'm Chris Drew from Minutes of Sports. That's my guy Ron from Best Damn Media. Got a game this weekend. Had a game last weekend. There's football all the time. There's football going on. In a couple minutes here? I mean, it's football palooza. They would call it to end the season. We're here to give you all of your Buckeye content that you will need for the remainder of this year. Ron, what's good?
Nothing much, man. Still number one. We're on top, so cannot complain. Like you said, game last week, game this week. The show keeps going. What do they say? The best thing about being 9-0
is the opportunity to go 10-0. Literally that. No, I mean, Ohio State's in a great place. If you're an Ohio State fan, you have to feel good just about everything that's going on. I mean, primarily for the most part this season, you've been able to avoid the scares outside of Notre Dame. You've won the games you're supposed to win, and you also have 2 ranked wins to go with that. And because of that, you've been kind of the number 1 team. And if you look at the landscape of the entire country, I mean, Ron, we take a look around. Who is that runaway dominant team?
There isn't. I think this is a wide open year, and for a year for Ohio State to be flawed on offense. I mean, we were just talking about the regression that this offense has seen, but it seems like this would be the year to do it, to have a dominant defense when you don't have like a 2019 LSU looming as far as a juggernaut that you may run into.
Yeah, dude, no juggernauts. And it's crazy because like usually in college football, because there's no draft and it's about recruiting and about getting your collection of guys, a lot of times by now, at least there is a juggernaut. I mean, by now, usually like Bama's undefeated and you feel like they are one of those teams that's elite. Their offense, they're not going crazy scoring over 40. Georgia, the past 2 years has been really good start to finish. Even then, it has had their scares, but you look around, it doesn't seem like they have the same NFL talent they had a year ago or the year before. I mean, if you take a look out west, people thought that Washington may have been that dominant force. Then all of a sudden you put up 15 points in a game, and it's like, oh, people are ready to compare you to the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, LSU teams. We know you're not that. Oregon, who is a darling nationally, has 1 loss to Washington, so they're not the dominant factor team. And you're sitting here at Ohio State, and Ohio State is, one of the best defenses in the country. You got to like that. The best receiver in the country that I cannot wait to talk about, him coming up a little bit later. So it feels like Ohio State's kind of sitting where you want to be at, right?
And defense wins championships. So if you're going to be dominant
Ron, that's what the old heads say. And I'm in love with you, Ron. I have never once believed that. I have never once thought it. But this year, I'm feeling it, right? Like I want to win a natty.
I hope so.
That was the old football. Like the old football is defense wins natties. And Ryan Day, I told you he'd been studying Jim Tressel, rewound this thing all the way back to those years, to 2002, and we are the 2002 Ohio State Buckeyes.
You're talking to a Buckeye and a Steelers fan, man. I gotta believe it. Like, that's my only hope. I grew up on Tressel ball and Cower ball. Like, it doesn't get more hard-nosed than that. So, I mean, I gotta believe in defense wins championships. It's been pounded in my head my entire life. And with the way my team's looking, if offense wins championships, man, we got a long off season ahead of us.
Yeah, facts. And, the defense has been there. They've played really good. They've been on the field a lot. Last week against Rutgers, I mean, we talked about it at great length. It never feels good to be losing at halftime against a team like Rutgers. But the defense held up, even though they were out there for what feels like 10 years and couldn't really get a break. And honestly, the defense scored the go-ahead touchdown, and that means something. So last week was them. This week, Michigan State. And then next week, Minnesota, and then obviously the big dog.
We're the big dog. Don't call them that.
Okay, the back-to-back Big Ten champion Michigan team is 3 games, I should say, away, and I'm excited to talk about that when we get there. Do want to talk about the health. Like we just said, the defense has been out there, bro, a ton. They're out there. Played all season, but a lot of times when you have a unit like that is out there a lot, guys do get hurt. We are dealing with some injuries on the defensive side. I'm worried about Lathan Ransom missing multiple games. I know Tommy's beat up. Denzel also beat up. Proctor beat up. I mean, we got some guys out in this defense. How much does that concern you, at least, with the defense being able to continue to play at this elite level?
It doesn't. It concerns me for a reason that you wouldn't quite expect. Not so much the the depth behind them, because I think they're more than competent and I think they have plenty of skill behind some of these guys. But I'm worried about losing the continuity that we had on defense. It seemed like this defense was really gelling all year. And you talk about Jim Knowles and this defense and wanting to have multiple guys that know how to call the defense, whether that be the safety that he calls the adjuster position because they have so much responsibility back there. Tommy Eichenberg calling the defense. If he's not out there, will Still Chambers have to call it? Well, some of these alignment issues present themselves if they're having issues getting aligned, if a team goes tempo, or if they can't get set on a third down, getting a new call in. That's what I'm worried about, the continuity of these shifts. I think there's plenty of talent behind them, but with them this late in the season and having guys having to be thrusted into roles that they haven't been in, and we've talked throughout the year, why aren't we getting some of these guys in at the end of the game? And now we're talking about the last 3 games on Ohio State's schedule, and it's like, could we be starting a true freshman in Malik Hartford at free safety? Could Sonny Styles be playing out of position at strong safety? And then you have Jermaine Matthews, again, a true freshman who we think is one of the best corners in the country, even as a true freshman, but he still doesn't have the game reps that you would like to have for someone that's going to be going up against, a JJ McCarthy and Roman Wilson at the end of the season.
Yeah, bro. Lathan Ransom to me is elite, like they're saying in the chat. I thought he was on pace to be a first-team All-American nationally at safety. Really big-time player. Have him as a top two round draft pick. That's how good I think Lathan is. Lathan being able to come up and fit in a run fit and hit somebody. Also the coverage ability, the athleticism, side to side, and really big-time instincts and just a knack for the big play. He's really big-time. But it's funny, bro, because he's probably my favorite on the defense. I think Denzel Burke is probably a better player. And I think we will miss him less because of how good Jermaine Matthews is. Jermaine Matthews is sticky. I'm talking about like that gnat when you're at a picnic that will not leave you alone. You are always covered. And for the first time last week, we got a chance to see the young unit of BIA. Davison Igbinosun out there. Obviously, he's played well all year. Jermaine Matthews, Malik Hartford, and Sonny Styles were all out there at the same time, flying around, playing with physicality, and gave us a glimpse into what we said before. The future of BIA is now, essentially. And these young guys absolutely killed it last week.
Absolutely. They balled out. It was great to see all of those guys on the field. I saw an interesting stat about Iggy this week. He's 3rd on the team in tackles right now. And I know he gets a lot of flack because sometimes it seems like he's the only corner out there because it seems like it's the only place that you see completions, but it's just because everyone else is so locked down and they have to complete a pass eventually somewhere. And I feel like people place some of that blame on Iggy and undervalue how big he's been in the run game. And I say it week in and week out. I always see someone pop up at the end of a play after a big tackle, and I'm like, who is that? And it's number 1 every time, Davison Igbinosun, and his contribution in the run game can't be forgotten.
That's a fact. And then the guy that's not on there that is going to be draft eligible at the end of the year, Jordan Hancock, too. It's funny because I think Jordan Hancock has the closest skill set to Lathan Ransom, but he's a corner and not a defensive back. I do think one of the things we could see, if they don't feel super comfortable with Malik Hartford playing back there, is to move Sonny Styles back there and just play Lathan a lot at kind of that nickel spot. Or not Lathan, excuse me, Jordan Hancock a lot of that at the nickel spot because that's where he has been really good. Another guy that wants to come up and fit and hit. For you at least, if I had to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being we absolutely need all these guys back, 5 being maybe we need some of them back to beat Michigan or beat whoever, who do you want to see back? Like, who's the top of your priority list injury-wise?
It's Lathan. It has to be. Just because I have that much faith in Jermaine Matthews. I mean, Jermaine Matthews has played, 3 games where he's played significant snaps, and, the only time I remember seeing him out there is on the pick 6 because he's just been so shut down. I think he might have got beat in the end zone late in one of the games during garbage time, but
he got beat late against Penn State.
That's what it was. Late against Penn State. But overall, he's been fairly locked down. You barely see him out there. And again, I think these reps are huge for him, and I just think he's going to keep getting better. And it's crazy to say, like you said, you think that Denzel is potentially the better player than Lathan, but his backup and the replacement, it seems like there's not much of a drop-off, and I feel like it shows the depth that the Buckeyes have. So I think replacing Lathan is definitely going to be more difficult for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, this is where Ohio State's at such a position of luxury, Ron, because normally when you lose 2 to 3 NFL guys on your defense in your secondary, all in that same unit, usually there's a pretty significant drop-off. I mean, Josh Proctor also went out, and the guys that came in are also NFL players, and it's like, oh, thank goodness, because last year and the year before, they were so thin at defensive back that if someone got hurt or someone was nicked up, you were trotting out guys that were getting burnt. Like
not guys that are getting burned. I mean, we were to the point last year where we had Jake Seibert repping at cornerback in practice because we were so thin. I mean, we had more kickers than we had corners on the roster last year.
Which is nuts, is really, really nuts to think about it. And honestly, we've gotten so thin this year and really haven't seen much of Cam Martinez, which is another thing that's like kind of surprised me. But again, they're beat up bad. They have really good depth. And I am hopeful that the offense can help them out, because that's really what it's been, bro. Like, the offense has been so up and down, like a streaky shooter, that when they're cold, they're real cold. And when they're cold, that defense has to go out there again and again and again. We saw the time possession. The amount of time that Ohio State was on the field last week was very significant, and that's why a team like Rutgers was able to keep throwing those body blows and being able to run the ball. But I think even though they did give up the most yards on the ground that they had all season, I still think the defense played in large part a really good game.
I agree 1,000%. I feel like the success that Rutgers saw in the run game was more due to deficiencies on Ohio State's offense than it was issues on the defense. I just felt like they were worn down and tired, and we shouldn't have to ask our defense to do that, and especially against a team like Rutgers that's looking to play a physical game and push you around. I mean, hats off to Rutgers. They were out there hitting.
Yeah.
Like,
physical team, bro. Greg Schiano,
Greg
Schiano, and also like the most physical member in the secondary is Igmanosin, the other one.
Exactly.
How cool is that?
The Iggy Bowl.
You get talked about. Yeah, definitely really cool. Moving ahead a little bit, bro, we look at kind of how this team looks, individually, and how guys are kind of progressing through the season. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about who I believe is the best player in all college football, Marvin Harrison Jr., and he's been absolutely fantastic this year, kind of expected. Last week, one of the things that Rutgers did was keep it too high to make sure they didn't get beat on any big-time plays by him, especially. He's the big-time threat, and he kind of struggled. I mean, never any excuse to have 29 yards, under 30 yards if you're the best player in the country in a game. Obviously, that's something him and Kyle got to get figured out. But even in the red zone offense has shifted to, okay, we're going to run twice and then throw a fade. And we'll see what happens. And again, Marv continues to prove that 50-50 balls are not 50-50. They're 80-20.
Well, you know why we had to run the fade, because our patented play had to be taken out of the playbook. Throw to Kate Stover in double coverage in the red zone. They had to remove that play because he was hurt this past week, so they had to go to the Marvin Harrison Jr. fade. But, yeah, man, it's crazy that we're having this conversation, because I feel like we've come on the Bleacher Report multiple times and talked about the not struggles that Marvin Harrison Jr. has had, but lack of production as far as targets, and teams have found ways to scheme him out of the game. And here he is still in the conversation for Blitnikoff and Heisman, still with 10 touchdowns, approaching 1,000 yards on the season. And he's had a couple games where, like even last week, 2 touchdowns, but 40 yards. I believe he had less than 40 against Indiana. So to have 2 games like that on your resume and still have the statistical output to even be in these conversations is astounding.
It's crazy because one of the things that is kind of missing, I feel like, CJ Stroud's scramble game. I know he didn't do it all the time, but there were times where he was willing to roll out of the pocket and create. And I think that helped out Marv. Obviously, we saw that in a big, big way against Georgia. I think Marv would benefit from some of that, just because now at this point, if the read's not for you and you don't win off the route immediately, you're not getting the ball. I think that has contributed. But the fact that Marv has still had this kind of input, over 900 yards on 52 catches, averaging 17 yards per catch, is really big time stuff. And you're looking around the country. Yeah, there may be guys who have more yards, but in terms of like overall team impact, I'm not sure what receiver has a bigger team impact. Obviously, we know that this offense has had its struggles. It feels like Kyle's struggles have really hindered him, but he's still forced this team on his own to win games. I mean, I told you yesterday, and we're going to talk about this guy in a sec, between him and Trey, this team's going to accidentally talent their way to 24 points a game.
Absolutely. I mean, you have a 5-star running back in Travion Henderson, who was the #1 back in his class, and then Marvin Harrison Jr., who, I mean, at some points, people were talking before the season, could he be the number 1 overall pick? I mean, if the quarterback draft wasn't so deep, I feel like he might have an argument to be a first overall pick or a top 3 pick in the NFL draft. So with that much talent, it's crazy to see the Buckeyes potentially struggle on offense. And it'd be hard to find a team that's able to keep them under the defensive scoring output, because we have that magical number of 17. And if the Buckeyes are able to keep teams under 17, I feel like the Buckeyes have enough talent on offense, regardless of quarterback struggles, that they can put up at least 20.
Dog, I do really think that him having his running mate back will help. I think it hurt him a little bit. The fact that Emeka was out, it made it easier to kind of focus on him, and Cade Stover being out. Rutgers got lucky. I mean, I know Emeka played. He definitely wasn't 100%, still knocking off some rust, but I think teams have been able to take things away because of, not everybody being healthy. So I wanted to ask you about the Biletnikoff. Do you think he is going to win the Biletnikoff? Should he be the Biletnikoff favorite? Is there anybody you worry about? Because for me, at least, I think he is the favorite based on impact to his team, if that makes sense.
Like when you're watching a game and you see a horrible call and you're like, I just know that makeup call is coming. Give it 3 possessions. It's coming. I feel like we're getting a makeup Biletnikoff. Whether Marv has the statistical output or not this season, I feel like he deserved it that much last year that they're like, as long as he's healthy and finishes out this season with 1,000 yards, we're giving it to him. Go ahead.
I mean, last year, like Jalen Hyatt had the massive game, had the quote unquote Biletnikoff moment, but everybody in the country knows who the best receiver was. That's why Jalen Hyatt was a 3rd-round pick.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I'm all here for it. Like the makeup call, I hope that that's the case. It's crazy though, because like the Biletnikoff, for being wide receiver, we don't have guys that win the Biletnikoff. Isn't that weird?
We have one. We have one.
Like Chris Olave, JSN, and Garrett Wilson all together. None of them were even Biletnikoff finalists.
That's insane. You talk about Ohio State being wide receiver U. We were doing a little dive into the stats before the show. We've had 2,000-yard receivers for the past 2 seasons leading up to this year. And 2 years ago, we had almost 3 with Chris Olave coming up 64 yards short. And then the last time outside of the COVID year that Ohio State didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver was when they had a 2,000-yard rusher in 2019. It's looking like the Buckeyes are only going to have one 1,000-yard receiver this year. I know Emeka has been hurt, but man, does it surprise you a little bit that we haven't seen someone step up and assert themselves? It seems like Carnell Tate is bubbling to the surface and everyone knows that he's going to be next, but I thought that there would be a larger door open for him this year with Emeka going down, but it just doesn't seem like we've had that wide receiver production outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. I know even when Emeka was healthy, I think it was 2 games ago, last game, Trey was the leading receiver, leading receiver with 80 yards. And then before the game before that, wide receivers not named Marvin Harrison Jr. only had 3 catches. We just talked about wide receiver U and not having a Biletnikoff winner in quite some time, but it's crazy to see the drop in production we've seen from wide receiver at Ohio State this year.
It is, man. I don't want to act like I'm smarter than the coaches or anything, but I feel like there's no way Carnell Tate should be playing more. Like Julian Fleming's been cool, but only 190 yards so far this season with 0 touchdowns. Carnell Tate, every time he gets out there, he makes 2 back-to-back catches, then we don't see him. I think he's a guy that he showed a willingness to block, knows he's close to be playing a lot, but also like that happens when you go from CJ Stroud, who's going to win Rookie of the Year, to Kyle McCord, whose nickname is Honda McCord. So it's just like, these 2 things are not the same. I want to jump ahead while we're here and talk about Kyle McCord. Look, bro, Kyle, it's funny because if you just look at the stat sheet and don't look at the games, people are saying to us, like, oh, why are you complaining? He's got 2,300 yards, 17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's up there with J.J. McCarthy in every major statistical category. And it's like, no, you guys don't get it. When I watch these games, I watch miss after miss after miss, and I get frustrated. Now, he will go on these crazy hot streaks, like game on the line against Notre Dame. Like D'Angelo Russell said, he's got ice water in his veins and made it shake. But other than that, it's kind of like, this is a headache. This is a headache watching this.
Man, I saw the J.J. McCarthy and Kyle McCord stats side by side floating around, and I'll take any opportunity to slander Michigan if I have the chance.
Fast.
But I'm looking at these stats side by side, and I'm like, I'm not here for this Buckeye propaganda, man. I've watched both of these guys play. One of them is better than the other. Everybody's like, well, look at the stats. I'm like, well, look at the games. Have you watched the games? Because when I watch Michigan football, I'm like, I'd rather have him as my quarterback. I mean, Kyle has continued to get it done week in and week out. We find a way to win. It seems like he flips a switch during halftime. I don't know what they say to him. Maybe they're giving him Mike Secret stuff at halftime, like it's Space Jam or something, but he comes out and balls out in the second half. So maybe he's just a second half quarterback, but I feel like Buckeye fans, I don't know if I'm alone, but I live in the constant fear that one of these slow starts is going to bite the Buckeyes in the behind, and they're going to get too far behind on the scoreboard before Kyle flips that switch. And that's my biggest fear.
Bro, it's like a double-edged sword, right? Because the other side of it where I'm at is like, I know that if Kyle McCord puts together a complete game, we're liable to beat a team by 30.
Generational lies will be told.
I'm just saying, like if he puts two good halves together, this Ohio State team beats Michigan by 17. And that's not even with the fan blinders on. Like, that's how good I think everybody else is. No, for real, bro. Like they had a chance to blow out Penn State if he makes 4 second-half throws.
That's
not
true.
even like the first half was a bucket of mid, a whole bucket of mid. I'm talking like the chum bucket. When it's time and he can put together a game, bro, I think he beats Michigan by 17. I think he beats Bama by 10. I think he beats Georgia by 10 because of how good these parts are. Right now, he's being put in the book bag by Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey. Once my bro gets legs in the first half and starts walking, they're a really dangerous team. I mean, they're winning by double digits, Ron, with mid-quarterback play. He's putting up stats with mid-quarterback play.
And the craziest thing that you said about that is what the score could have been if he made some of those throws against Penn State. One thing that you forgot about, you're talking about all the weapons he has behind him and what he's being carried by. He did that with Mine Williams running for 63 yards on less than 3 yards per carry against Penn State, and we were still a few throws away from running away with that game. So if Travion Henderson is fully healthy, Emeka Ibuka is healthy, and this offense starts clicking, I do see a high ceiling for it. But, man, I've been saying that phrase, man, if we put it all together, man, if we put it all together. How many weeks into the season, like, do you have to retire that phrase because it's week 10? And I guess you play all the games until you get the results. So I guess he has till the end of the year to figure it out. But I'm having a hard time believing that he's capable of doing it because we've only had two. The Buckeyes averaged 40 yards per game last season. We've only had two 40-point outputs this year, 63 against Western Kentucky and 41 against Purdue. So are the Buckeyes playing good defenses? Yeah, Rutgers has one of the best pass defenses in the country. But are they going to be able to do it when it really counts? And I still have those worries.
Bro, I just need bro to have his Terrence Ross moment. I don't know if you remember, but one random night in Toronto, Terrence Ross, who was averaging maybe like 13 points in the season, randomly went off for 51. And it's like nothing surprised anybody, but the shots he was taking were just going in. I just need that from Kyle McCord one time because I think we're a dynamic quarterback, a two good halves away from really being the, oh, shoot, that's the dominant team. Oh, shoot, you look around the nation, there's no dominant team except for when Kyle McCord puts together two good halves. Now it's a matter of if, not when, because I don't know if bro can.
Do you think national fans have completely written off Kyle McCord and believe that he's incapable of that? Like, you seem to be of the belief that he still has it in him. But I feel like some people are already writing him off and have determined that Ohio State doesn't have that capability and they're just a good defense at this point.
Well, taking it back to Toronto, I feel like Vince Young, I got one more in me. Or Vince Carter, I got one more in me. You know, that's where we're at. Yes, the rest of the country has written him off. 90% of Buckeye Nation is like, he is who he is. We're good for 3 turnover-worthy plays a game. I mean, shoot, me too, almost. I got like one more in me, though. You know what I got in me? You know what I got in me, Ron? I'm going to keep it a beam. Bro, bowl prep Ryan Day is legitimately unbelievable. Like, quarterbacks get that extra practice time with Ryan Day and turn into Joe Montana during bowl prep. That's what it was. And so I'm hoping that during bowl prep, he can turn my boy into Carson Wentz or something just for the one time.
And and my only counter to that is Ryan Day with bowl prep is a scary proposition. But the thing that I'm also concerned about is there's this thing called the off season. It's like 9 months of bowl prep, and we weren't ready for Indiana. So if you couldn't get bro ready with 9 months to beat Indiana, I don't know about 1 month to beat Georgia.
And I hear you, Ron. But bro, we spent a whole year trying to get ready for Michigan, and then we almost beat Georgia. And I'm talking about the college version of Carson Wentz, the one that got drafted number 2 overall, not the one that got cut. I don't want that to get twisted or construed. Just while we're here, just while we're getting it going. And no, Peter, no one wants to give you Michigan plus 17 because I don't think it's going to happen. I'm just saying if he puts together 2 good halves, which is going to be tough to do against Michigan, considering Michigan's the only team in college football that is holding opponents to an average of below 10 points a game. Is it because of signs?
I was going to say, kind of suspicious that no one else in the country is able to do that, but
an advanced network, right?
Yeah, advanced.
Bro,
network.
we got to talk about Trey, bro. We got to talk about Trey Henderson. Trey might be the most important player on this offense.
I think he absolutely is.
And we are watching Ryan Day lean on his offensive line and running back room to get the offense going.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that that's kind of like my saving grace, my lone hope for this offense taking a step forward, because it's like we see our running game is finally getting going, and it's like, check, we got that done. We got Trey involved in the pass game, something that we've been talking about, getting Travion Henderson in space and letting him be explosive. We see him go off for 80 receiving yards this past week. Could the final infinity stone for this offense be Kyle McCord get the play action going? Because if this team becomes so dominant in the run game that teams have to sell out to try to stop Travion, can Kyle hit the guy streaking wide open? Or are we going to start seeing some of that play action that we know Kyle to be? I mean, that's his calling card at Ohio State. That's the one hope that everyone's still holding on to. They see this young gunslinger as a true freshman step into a quarterback battle with CJ Stroud, and the first play of the game is play action 40 yards down the field to Garrett Wilson. Is that still inside Kyle McCord, and can we see that level up? That's the saving grace for me as far as can this offense level up. I want to write them off, but at the same time, we're finally starting to see all of the other elements click. Marvin Harrison Jr.'s going, Travion Henderson's going. This offensive line is blocking in the run game. Can Kyle get it going in the play action now that Emeka Egbuka is back and he has his whole stable of receivers as well as a running back that's producing?
Last time Ryan Day was calling plays when he did not have an elite quarterback was back in his days at Boston College. And at Boston College, he was there with a guy named Justin Fry. And that team, without an elite quarterback, put together such a dynamic run game and had a running back, Andre Williams, run for 2,000 yards and be in the Heisman conversation. The reason they had to do that was because they didn't have an elite quarterback. Right now is the first time since Ryan Day's been at Ohio State where he's leaning on the run game in a way that I have not seen him do it before. I know in 19 you had J.K. Dobbins run for 2K, but it was a different kind of lean because you trusted Justin Fields. Justin Fields could also do a lot, and they didn't need that to open things up. This year, they need things to open things up, and Ryan Day has learned and grown as a coach. If teams want to sit back, Rutgers, you want to sit back and make sure Marv and nobody beats you deep, cool. Trey's going to rip off 10, 12, 13 sometimes, and then catch a ball and take it 60. Are you willing to die that kind of way on a football field? So for me, at least, I think that the run game speaks to the significant growth of Ryan Day and maybe out of necessity to roll with it because he knows they're going to have to win in an NFL-style way, like the Steelers, like my Giants, like we've seen teams in the past, like San Francisco. And he's done a lot of creative stuff with the run game. So Trey's been unbelievable, and he's such a twitched-up athlete, and I'm really excited for him, home run-wise.
Absolutely. It feels like we're getting to the point in the season where everything is viewed through the lens of championship expectations, whether that be Big Ten championship or national championship. The Buckeyes have 3 games remaining on their schedule: Michigan State, Minnesota, and the team up north. I don't want us to get too ahead of ourselves because we know we have plenty of excitement leading up to that Michigan game, but I do want to get your thoughts and the chat's thoughts on our final poll. Who will be the bigger challenge before the team up north, Michigan State or Minnesota?
I think it's Minnesota will be the tougher test. I think both teams stink while I'm here. PJ Fleck's Minnesota team beat Michigan State 27-12. Michigan State only has wins over Central Michigan and Richmond. They stink. So Minnesota's a tougher test.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite phrase in all of college football is PJ Fleck is a bozo. Like, I would, put that on my tombstone if you can. But I do have to agree with you. I do think Minnesota is the better team, and I think that just speaks to the struggles that Michigan State is having right now. But, man, the Buckeyes have plenty to look forward to, man, that they control their own destiny as far as winning out the rest of the year. Everything is still in front of them as far as their goals, as far as winning the Big Ten championship, beating the team up north, and winning that elusive national championship. So good things ahead of the Buckeyes, I hope. Chris Drew, I appreciate you joining me here on Bleacher Report today. Let the people know where they can find you before we get out of here.
Every weekday, noon, Minutes of Sports YouTube. Catch me in there talking all kinds of ball, Midwest ball, national ball, and, of course, Ohio State ball. Honestly, and catch me here with Kicking It with Ron talking about Ohio State.
Absolutely. If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at 2_TEES. That's 2 T's. You can find me on the Best Damn Media YouTube. We are live 7 days a week for college football pregame shows, the flagship Buckeye BS, and our daily show Monday through Friday, the Buckeye Roast, every morning at 8 a.m. We appreciate Bleacher Report having us. We will be back every Tuesday and Thursday the rest of the month. Go Bucks and OH.
I